Hello, and we're live. Welcome to our virtual presentation of Things We Couldn't Say with author Jay Coles and our moderator, Dave Connis. We have signed book plates available for those interested in purchasing a copy tonight. To request one with your purchase, just write signed book plate in the order comments when you are checking out your cart on our website. You can access our website by clicking on the green purchase button directly below the viewer's screen. And we'll be taking audience questions at the end of the event. So to send in your question, just use the Ask a Question button at the very bottom of the screen. You can also vote for any questions you'd like, and the popular ones will make their way to the top. All right, so let me introduce our guests, and then we can get started. So Jay Coles is a graduate of Vincennes University and Ball State University. When he's not writing diverse books, he's advocating for them and composes for various music publishers. His debut novel, Tyler Johnson Was Here, is based on true events in his life and inspired by police brutality in America. And tonight's moderator is Dave Connis, the author of Suggested Reading and The Temptation of Adam. All right, so with that said, I'm going to turn my camera off and enjoy the talk, everyone.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I was laughing at the beginning because Jay and I had we were talking before this, and I was making the joke that I would come up with a different title for his book every single time I said it. And I thought of Things We Couldn't Fillet.
I love it. I love it. It is brilliant.
I don't know if I'm going to beat that one ever. I'll try. We'll see. It'll probably be like just me for the rest of this month, just like randomly posting things on Instagram.
Yeah, I like it. It rhymes. I like it.
Yeah, Things We Couldn't Fillet. I don't know. I'll have to go to my rhyming dictionary that I use every once in a while.
There you go.
Yep. Well, hello everyone. So I'm super honored to be doing this. This is going to be like the third time Jay has heard this, but I called Jay earlier today to kind of just run through what I was thinking about talking about. And I was like, dude, when did we even meet? Like, I don't remember when we met. Because we've known each other for a while, and he reminded me that we met back in 2016. Is that right? It was before I had come out with my first novel, The Temptation of Adam, and it was before Jay had even got an agent, or even had you even written Tyler yet by that point?
I don't think so, actually. No.
I don't know. Okay, so yeah, it was before any of that, and we had both he read a Word doc of my first book.
Yeah.
Now
it's here in my hands.
Now it's there in his hands, physical copy.
Yeah.
So yeah, just Jay, again, it's just a really huge honor for me to do this. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, thank you. Of course.
Hopefully I don't embarrass you too much.
You're good.
We'll see.
I trust you.
We'll see. Maybe I'll try on purpose. So Jay, can you tell me your story-mony? It's like a testimony, but not a testimony, but specifically about stories. Like, where did this come from? Where did the love of stories come from? Mm-hmm. When did you start writing? Like, go back to like your birth and all of the board books you read and all that stuff. Just start from the beginning and walk us through how we got to today.
Yeah. I feel like my story starts out in a very small neighborhood on the west side of Indianapolis, where there's a lot of substance abuse. There's a lot of poverty, homelessness, hyper-policing, those kinds of things. So kind of like my escape growing up had been in books, and it wasn't even like my earliest memories of books were like not reading them, but like holding them, looking at them, kind of flipping through and being like just really like enamored with the idea of a book or the idea of stories. But I would always go. My mom, when I was a kid, she went to college to get her like a medical degree, some kind of medical degree. And to study, she would always go to like our local library. And I would always kind of like tag along with her to go to our local library, and would just kind of spend like hours as she was studying, kind of just walking through all the like aisles and looking at all the books on the shelves, and then finding books with characters that had Black and brown people on the cover, even though those books usually ended up being about like slavery or like civil rights or things like that, or like autobiographies or things like that. And so I really didn't start taking like reading seriously until maybe like middle school, when I got to read like some dystopian stories.
Oh man, dude.
And not even like modern dystopian stories, but like, you know, kind of the Ray Bradbury kind of stories or whatever. And being like, oh man, like this is really cool. Like I feel like I can transport myself to this other like world essentially. And felt like I needed to go and check out all these books from my like school library. I really enjoyed when the Scholastic Book Fair came to my school. I would always like try to find any quarters that I had around in my house so I can like get enough quarters to have enough money to buy at least one book. And yeah, I feel like the rest is kind of history in that. Just the idea of not only like being transported into another world, but even being like feeling connected to like characters like who weren't people in my neighborhood, or you know, people who were exactly like me, or I could like identify with these characters that I was reading, was really like influential for me. It actually inspired me to like take writing seriously too, later on in my life. But that's kind of where my story and love of books and writing originates. But
J. Cole's the genesis, an origin story. So a few questions in all of that. One, the local library. Can you explain to me still what it looks like?
Yeah. Like growing up?
Yeah, dude. I just feel like one of the earliest memories is like walking into this library.
Yeah.
Like it was a big library.
Yeah.
And I had to be at least 2 or 3. Like my mom would bring me, and I remember standing at the counter, but I couldn't even see up it yet, and just like being completely mind blown. Like, what is this place?
No, for sure. I mean, I remember having similar feelings when I would walk in. There were just so many colors when I walked in. Like they had, just shelves and shelves full of like one half of the library is for like adults and the other half is for like kids. So that you would find your middle grade books and your like children's picture books and your young adult books and things like that. Like in that section, I remember going over there, and they were like this really old, like box computers, like the original Mac computers. So you'd be able to like kind of click through those and find like a book, you know, that, or type through on those like a book that you were looking for.
They have Oregon Trail on them.
Yeah. And I remember being like just searching for like some of my favorite books. At that time I was like really obsessed with like Captain Underpants. And so I would like I would like check out all the Captain Underpants books, and they just kept coming out. So I was like, man, every time I went back, I would have to pay money because I had late fees. Because I just always forget to return the books. But yeah.
So when it came time, you were saying earlier that you had to scrounge around money to buy a book at the Scholastic Book Fair.
Yeah.
And you had to scrounge because you were too busy paying late fees.
Exactly. That too. Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like Tiny J is looking around this library for books with people like Black, brown people on the covers, and you're finding biographies, you're finding, I mean, everything but probably the like books that you most connected with.
Yeah.
How did that impact kind of the journey from wanting to take writing seriously, if at all?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I never felt like, I don't think there was a single moment as I was kind of growing up where I was like, I can be an author. I can be, someone who writes a book. Just because, in my home, what was told to me is that I was going to be a lawyer, or I was going to be a doctor. I was going to do something that was going to make my parents a lot of, money.
Yeah.
It was my life. Like, it was that kind of thing going on at home. And in school, like, being an author wasn't ever a career that like we talked about on career day, and so so it was just kind of so foreign to me that like that was a possibility. Even like, again, like me finding these books that were written by Black people who had already been dead for years and years. I was still like, oh, that's for like old people, or like people who are smarter than me, wiser than me, not anyone. I was like, there's no way I have anything important to say or to write about or whatever. Like, I don't have a story that's good enough. And so really, like, my journey in writing started with me writing music. So before I even wrote stories, I wrote stories through a music form. And I know that's something that we probably share in this dynamic of music.
I think that's one of the things we talked about.
Yeah. I remember being in like 6th grade band, and being like, man, this music that we're playing is really boring to me. Like, I don't feel like it's telling a story to my heart. And so I remember going home and like, after having no experience, only like living off of pride, like was kind of like, I'm going to compose a piece of music that's far better than anything we've ever played in 6th grade band.
Right. John Williams.
I'm going to write this whole story about it too.
With John Williams.
And
J. Cole.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I was like, I did it. And that was really where I was like, oh man, like I can tell a story in this way, and like it means something to me. Even if it's not something that like will be mass produced, or people are going to read it or like play it. It will still be something that I get to tell a story in. And then from there, started writing short stories, and then longer works like novels by the time I was in high school.
So long, much longer. Interesting. Yeah. So how did those stories, this might be off the rails, but like, how did you, because you did mainly like composing, like how did you, as a songwriter, so I've written songs, I know some words. So I've written songs before, and I feel like with words, I can tell a story, or I can like explore an emotion or stuff like that. How did you do that through composing? Like, what were the stories that you were telling in that music, and how did that lead you to short stories? That's really interesting. Like, that's such an interesting way to find yourself there.
Yeah, I feel like, obviously words can make us feel really deeply, right? But I think same thing with music without words, and I literally just had all these sounds that I got to play around with. And I was like, what kind of story do I want to tell? And then from there, like, what kind of feelings come about in this story? And so I had this like really, really old jank keyboard that sounded garbage, but I would like play around on that.
Was it like
this sounds kind of sad.
Casio that you rescued out of? Yeah.
Exactly.
I know exactly what that one is.
And I'd be like, oh, this sounds kind of sad. This chord is like something that like feels like it could be about right. And I'll just kind of like put that into like the notation software that I had. And by the end, felt like I came up with something that was like, okay, something that was like, this conveys like the story that I'm wanting to convey, but it probably isn't actually good music if I gave it to like a music director or tried to get it published at the time when I first started,
Right.
So I just feel like music, especially music without words, instrumental music, classical music, orchestral music, has a way of making us feel and explore the human experience in ways that words cannot, Maybe that's just my like weird brain. I don't know. But I do believe that really deeply.
And No, I mean, we could talk about probably orchestral music for a while, but there are some songs that just like when they play, like I can't not feel something. I'm trying to think. I mean, one of them, I mean, I was making fun of John Williams earlier, but like the Princess, I think it's Leia, the Princess Leia theme, dude, slays me every time, every time. So I think you're spot on there.
Yeah.
I'll take the weird brain. So we've got Tiny J, or maybe less Tiny J at this point, writing music that are telling stories that are interacting with like your heart, basically. Yeah. And from there, what are you reading then? Like where is the what's the Second Temple period? That's such a horrible inside joke. What's that middle ground? What are you reading? Like, how are you moving into the short stories? And then like, what is the impetus to like, you know what, today's the day. You woke up, you chose novel.
Yep. Yeah. There was actually like a really jarring transition into that. So after giving up like the Captain Underpants books and things like that, and the other books similar to that, my mom had a very extensive library of books because she was an avid reader. Her mom's an avid reader. That just kind of ran in our family to be people who were like well read. And so I remember just grabbing books off of her shelf, like from as early as like maybe 8th grade, being like, I'm going to read this book, not knowing necessarily what the book was going to be about. But me going, okay, if this is a book that my mom read and enjoyed, I'm going to see if I can also read it and enjoy it. And there are oftentimes really, really bad romance novels. Or even like on the level of like 50 Shades of Grey, you know, like that
you're just like, oh God.
I'm reading this, I'm like, whoa, what is happening?
What is happening?
You know, what is happening here? And one of the books actually was Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, which was really the first introduction that I had to like a Black queer character. And I was like, man, something about that felt like special to me, like not just because it was James Baldwin and the you know, the book was good, but the fact that like the character was named Giovanni. And I remember my mom telling me that like my like, I don't know if you ever had an almost name, but my almost name was Giovanni. Like my parents almost named me Giovanni when I was born instead of just
dude.
so I kind of had curiosity about that.
Your character, I mean, the character in Things We Couldn't Fillet, Giovanni, Theo. So that's totally a shout out, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that's awesome. Good
multiple
job.
times in the book. Yeah,
multiple times, dude. Well done.
Thank you.
I got myself distracted by Things We Couldn't Fillet. Now I lost my train of thought. My train of thought was I did have an almost name, but it's like it was because my parents thought I was going to be a girl, and they couldn't find out at the time. So my almost name is going to be Summer.
Nice.
Yeah. So that was my almost name. Dave, Summer, same thing.
I'm going to change your name in my phone to Summer.
Oh, Summer Connis.
Yeah.
Summer Connis.
Like, yeah, about like a month from now, I'm going to be like, who the hell?
What is this? What is this person? I know Dave Connis. What is this?
Yeah, I was like, who the hell?
So you, so James Baldwin, you know, you're starting to pick up these, like, I haven't read that book yet. I don't even know if it's on my list, but it probably should be. But you're starting to pick up these like increasingly like heavy, thick, like trying to wrestle with like these intense themed books. Is this when you're starting to actually like sit down and put pen to paper or keyboard?
Yeah, I mean, I shortly after that, I was like, man, like I want to see more stories of Black people just existing, and living life outside of like, I don't know, kind of like the slavery, civil rights, like those kinds of things that like I've been exposed to very early on, like way back, which those books were important to me. I needed to read them, all that jazz. But me having this desire of like, I just want to write myself, back into like stories that were about just kind of normal life, everyday life, in the present day. And even Black kids going on adventures, Black kids going on road trips, and those being short stories that I wrote just for fun, because I was like, yeah, like I need to kind of process and cope with just the status of like being a Black person in America. And turning the stories was really like easy. Turning the short stories really is an easy transition to do in kind of what I was processing and coping with at the time. But really the catalyst for me starting to write a novel was more of like an emotion. It was more of like the anger that I felt following the Trayvon Martin situation, with coming home from school and watching the trial of George Zimmerman and not seeing justice in that case, but also like kind of hearing so many like divisive narratives about Trayvon Martin, like both in my community and at school. I felt like I needed to take writing novels seriously and process my anger in that way. And I had started writing that when I was a senior in high school. The very first draft of Tyler Johnson Was Here, which was a short story originally.
Wow.
Started that when I was a senior in high school, and I didn't like turn it into a full-length novel until I went to college. I was a freshman in college, and so it went from a short story, me processing anger of the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin case, and then turning into a full-length novel by the time I was like a freshman in college. And yeah, like the rest is kind of history. I mean, and that like I ended up getting some people to look at it, to edit it for me, to affirm that like the book was important and like that I had every right to write the book. Kind of like helped me fight imposter syndrome a little bit. And then sent it out like to like 250 agents like in a night. And it was like, someone please take this book. And ended up getting some bites, and landed my current agent. So
man, so writing, so you music to just like using short stories is kind of like an escape to handle being Black in America, to put yourself into a story, the power of that, like the power of that. And then that kind of brought you to writing Tyler. And from there you have wound up with, man, I mean, you've done Things We Couldn't Say. How many anthologies? You were just in Black Boy Joy.
Yeah.
Was
Battle of the Bands,
New York Times. And have you and now you got Things We Couldn't Spray. And I think the world for sure is better off for all of these stories, man. Can you tell us a little bit about like things we couldn't play?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my sophomore novel.
Such a killer cover.
I love this cover. I'm obsessed with it. When I first saw the cover, crying. I love that like on the hard.
Were they golden tears?
Yeah, I can't decide if they're like golden tears or golden raindrops, but both are really, really big in the book. So I guess it's up for your interpretation.
Whoa, dude, symbolism.
Yeah, I know. And I like that on the hardcover. They're like kind of foil. It's really awesome.
I can tell here that there's like some texture to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, it's about a 17-year-old boy named Gio, or Giovanni, as we just mentioned. And he is...
Thanks, James Baldwin.
Inspired by James Baldwin's book. And he is essentially a Paramore stan. He loves the band Paramore, like I love the band Paramore. He lives in Indianapolis, which is where I'm from. He lives in a neighborhood that was similar to the one that I grew up in. Just a lot of similarities, but he's grieving the loss of his, or the fact that his birth mom walked out on him and his family when he was just a little boy. He was about 9 years old, kind of left him behind to pick up the pieces with him and his little brother. And now he's in high school, and his mom decides to show back up into his life with an explanation of why she left. And he has to kind of decide whether or not it's a good enough explanation to have a relationship with her, or not, or to say kind of like, I'm done, like I want to move forward without her. Meanwhile, he's also starting to have feelings for someone on his basketball team, and he's trying to decide, is that a friendship? So there's a lot. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a book about forgiveness and healing and grief, and all the ways that family can hurt us in our adolescence and teenagehood, and how do we reclaim our voice when we feel kind of silenced at times.
I was reading an interview, forget who it was, with you, but you mentioned that this sophomore book was really hard to write. Why? What happened?
Oh my gosh.
Besides, pandemics and all of that stuff.
Man, there's so much that I can tell you that happened that I can't actually say on this, event.
We'll talk later.
We'll definitely talk. I'll say one significant thing was the pandemic. I mean, I had started writing this book in 2019, because from selling / publishing Tyler Johnson Was Here, I felt completely like drained and depressed. So after Tyler Johnson sold and went out into the world, I was like, man, this sucks that the book of mine, because I had tried to sell other books or tried to pitch other books before, but there were no bites. I felt so sad that the book that was picked up was a book about Black pain, Black trauma, and felt incredibly grieved by it, but at the same time felt man, I have to be grateful, right? I have this opportunity that so many people don't get to have. So shouldn't I just be grateful and shut up, And so I had to kind of navigate that on top of once the book came out, I was someone who was regularly checking Goodreads and reviews and was seeing so many 1-star and negative reviews, and I was like, man, I have lost all of my words. I've lost all my creativity because of that, Maybe author stuff,
Yeah. When you were no, it's fine. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Narrator, you will never be fine. It's just not possible.
Exactly.
Man, so, and I think one thing that really just stuck out to me is you calling out when you were talking about your story, picking out these books that were explicitly about slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, those things were about those things are good books. Those are things that you needed to read, all of these things, but they're still about Black pain, right? So you get to this point in which your author career, and the book that sells is the book about Black pain. What?
Yeah, exactly.
So I can imagine the recovery from that. I mean, how do you recover from that? How do you work through that? And not just be super freaking bitter all the time.
Well, exactly. I think for me, for better or for worse, I just had to take a break. I just had to say, even though I was under contract to write another book for my publisher, I just had to say, have an honest conversation with my agent. I just don't have it in me to write right now. I don't have it in me to produce anything. And I need to advocate for myself in this way by just kind of giving up writing for a period of time, and doing other things. I I spent a lot of time traveling and being with people that I trust and love, pursuing joy and self-care, and luckily my agent was very, very understanding and was very graceful about it, and received that really well, which made me feel the freedom to be like, okay, like what I'm doing is an okay thing. Like it's a good thing for me to be advocating for myself, and I don't have to feel shame for taking a break when it feels like kind of what other authors are doing on social media is like, they're cranking them out like they just got them in their like desk somewhere. And I'm like, okay, I have to kind of be up.
You need another book. Okay, hold on 1 second.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The James Pattersons of the world or whatever.
Oh man, the people that. Never mind. I shouldn't say that on an event. How long was that break? What did that like? I'm really interested in asking around like this idea. I think I'm hearing in your voice like this concept of what's expected almost of authors is just like to crank, like to like go hog on like all of these books, and just like if you want to be relevant, or if you want to stay alive, or if you don't want to disappear from the face of the planet, which is like my story that I feel like I've done. Like if you want to not do any of that and just like fade into the annals of publishing history, then you need to like get it. You need to get it. So like what have you learned in that experience? Like where there's like this expectation where you're supposed to be writing your second book because it's under contract, and you just need to like, come on, let's go. But you're just not in it. Like, what have you learned in that? Like, how did you experience that?
Yeah, I think I had to learn that like, I'm a human being, like I had to learn that like, I know it feels so stupid, but it's like, man, when you become like, when you release a book, and you're like, man, I'm getting paid to write this book. People are asking me to come speak at their events and their schools. Like, it can be easy to feel like, man, I'm in demand. Like, I'm in demand in these places. I'm in demand by publishing. I'm in demand on social media, and I have to always be on. And so I felt like I had to kind of learn, albeit the hard way, that like, no, I'm a human being. Like, my mental health, my spiritual health, like all that stuff is important and that matters. And so I can learn to figure out the ways to like advocate for myself by saying no and by putting a pause on things. And that's really hard for me to do just in general, is like saying no and putting a pause on things. So I'm like, I have to be.
You're 9, right? Did you say you were 9 earlier?
So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's like that's the person who's just like, whatever, as long as there's no conflict.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay. So like learning that must have been a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I even felt like there was a dynamic for me and my agent, because I was like, man, if I don't write another book in this certain timeline or time frame, will she let me go, or will like my career be over? And she's like, no, there's no rush. Like, take a breath. Like, and I'm really, really grateful for Lauren, for the ways that she's helped advocate for me in ways that like I didn't even do for myself. So yeah.
Dude, I feel like I want to ask so many more questions about that and say no and like boundaries. It's just like something that I've been really struggling with, like something that I've been trying to figure out for myself. I mean, I was hinting at that earlier, but we just need to have we'll just talk again. We'll just have another call.
Yeah. For sure.
So we've got post Tyler, Tiny J is no longer tiny.
Nope.
But you're just feeling it, and you're grieving while also like having that inner narrative that's just like, I should be thankful for this, but you're like still grieving like the place almost where you started, which was like trying to figure out what it's like to be Black in America. And like, here you are again, and looking at like your own story that you wrote and like grieving that and trying to sort through that and sift through that. So you take a step back. 2019 comes.
Yeah.
Where does things we couldn't shoot?
I like how hard you're trying.
It's getting late here.
I love
we
it.
couldn't pray. Things we couldn't pray.
Yeah.
Where does things we couldn't pray come in? Like, where's the idea come from? How did you move from like out, like just I need to take a step back to okay, I'm here. I got an idea, and we're gonna go for it.
Yeah. I tried to like write so many other things in between things we couldn't say, and Tyler Johnson was here. Like I had tried to write so many other things, and they just weren't working out. And so what I ended up doing was taking an even longer break and instead focusing more of my time on anthologies and saying yes to doing short stories, because those were like less commitment. I mean, it was like easy money. I mean, there was just like
and you're probably, were you used to short stories because you kind of started short stories?
Yeah. I started with short stories, and I really feel comfortable with short stories. That's where I feel like I thrive. Maybe I'll write a short story collection sometime.
Do it.
But anyway, when the pandemic started, which was what, March 2020.
Hard to say, man. Time's an amalgam.
That's true. It is hard to say. It's like, well, right when we had like the original shutdown, my publishers, they were like, hey, it's time to have something. My agent was kind of pushing me in that direction. I was like, hey, it's time. And I was like, okay. Like, and there was some drama going on with my publishers at the time, which again, you and I can talk about later.
Yeah.
So on top of that drama, I just felt like stuck. I was like, I don't have anything to write. I don't know where I go from here. My career as an author needs to be over. Like, or can someone just fire me from this job already? I don't know. Because, you sign up for writing that one book, and then they're like, okay, we're optioning or signing up for another one. You got 2 books, like, whatever.
Yeah.
And so actually one day, like it was like a blessing. Like one day in the middle of the pandemic, and as I was in my kind of lowest point mentally, kind of was super, super depressed in this dark pit, the voice of Gio came to me and was like, essentially telling me like his story. And I remember really empathizing with his story, because I was like, yeah, like, gosh, like in this pandemic, we were all, maybe I shouldn't say all of us, but some of us were forced to like engage with the darker, harder parts of life and our personal like hearts. And so I felt like Gio's voice coming to me and like him spilling out his heart to me felt very natural. And I was like, I'm spilling out my heart too in this way by like starting to write a story. And so once because I'm a pantser, I started just kind of pantsing his story. I like felt like that was not only him kind of pouring out on the page, but me also healing and wrestling with the darker parts of my heart in that moment and in that season. And pretty soon, a month or so, 2 months in, I had the original draft of Things We Couldn't Say, which had a different title. It was, very, very different. A lot of other things were going on that didn't make the final version of the book. But long story short, like, I would say the pandemic is when I felt like I had time to slow down, engage with my soul, and then kind of heal on the page. But it started with Gio's voice kind of coming to me kind of randomly one night as I was just kind of sitting at my desk. And I will forever be thankful for that, because now, look, it's a whole book. And so I'm very grateful for Scholastic for taking a chance on it, and my editor, David Levithan, for taking a chance on it.
What a guy. Oh my gosh. He's so cool. I have a huge crush on him. He's like one of the first people I met in publishing. I was at a BAA, which is Book Expo of America. It doesn't exist anymore. It's dead. or at least its current iteration. But yeah, what a guy.
Yeah.
Also, I need to say this before I forget: things we couldn't J, because like I can't. I pulled up a list of things that rhyme with say, and dude, there's some prime stuff on here.
No, I like it.
I'm gonna be working through this for at least a year.
That's awesome. Keep my book relevant, man.
Right. Get that content.
Yeah, there you go.
So in things we couldn't, hold on, ballet. There's, I see the music side of you in there because there's all these playlists. What playlists? I'm going to ask you some playlist questions, and then after that, I think we'll give people a chance to ask any questions, and if not, we can figure something else out. But like, what playlist would you make for Gio, Ollie, Aisha, and what playlist would you make for the people who will read the book that you want to make sure know they feel seen?
Man, that's an awesome set of questions there. And I actually didn't I feel like it'd be really cool for me to kind of go back and like reflect on all those characters and be like, oh man, like create a playlist inspired or based off of like each character. Like I feel like that would be a really fun activity for me because I really do love the characters in this book and they mean a lot to me. For Gio, obviously he will have a lot of Paramore on his playlists. I mean, he does in the playlist that he mentions in the book. I feel like Gio is hardcore, like always in sad boy hours, which I really empathize with.
You're just here for it.
Yeah, a lot of the music that he would have, I feel like, would be a lot of slower, more reflective, like sadder lyrics, kind of thing. And actually, when I was writing to kind of like get more in Gio's head, I listened to this playlist on Spotify called the top 100 most beautiful songs in the world.
Dude, is that that's a Spotify playlist, right?
It's a Spotify playlist.
Pretty sure I've listened to that one. Yeah.
And some of the songs that are on that playlist, I like mentioned in the book because I was listening to it like as I was writing Gio's story. And so some of those songs will probably be on his playlist. I think for Ollie, he feels more of like a rock guy, but also like a really, 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 really like hardcore rap guy. Because he kind of wants to be, in like rap culture, pop culture, hip hop culture as much as he can, even though it's not really his lane. So I feel like he would have a lot of that on his playlist. For Aisha, I feel like she would have a lot of Beyonce, and rightfully so, or a lot of Nicki Minaj. I also feel like Gio would have some. He would kind of like be embarrassed about it, but he would have some Lil Nas X in there, which I would respect. So, and yeah, for people who like will read the book, like people who will be the audience of the book, I feel like all the songs that are mentioned in the book are in there for a reason. Like I feel like they were very intentional. Choices for me to like put them on those playlists and to reference even in the narrative, and so I'd recommend just compiling all those songs into a playlist and like listening to it.
If anybody does that, please send it to me. I'm on Instagram because I also want to listen through it. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah,
because I've listened to that like most beautiful songs in the world and loved it. I found a lot of really good stuff.
Actually, I forgot to tell you this. In one of the original drafts, there was an extra playlist that was mentioned in the book, and on that playlist, one of your songs was mentioned in there, and then, but the whole playlist got cut. So
doesn't matter.
Yep.
Highlight of my career. Which one?
Oh crap! I think it was here. I have it right here in my phone. Give me like 5 seconds.
Should I read
It was
titles while you're looking?
It was Satisfied.
Oh, dude. I shouldn't have that kind of reaction to my own song, but that song, like, it's been that song has turned into my like just life mantra.
Mm-hmm.
It is like incredibly deeply personal at any point in the last 5 years, and it's probably the song that I continually come back to. Like I say to myself all the time, like even just that chorus, like I say to myself, I tell myself that chorus, because I want to believe it. Like I want to believe it so bad. Okay, well that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Okay, things we couldn't delay.
Things we can't delay. The question.
Yeah, do we?
That was brilliant.
Dude, I mean, there's just some things we couldn't Marseille, things we couldn't bouquet.
I like it.
Yeah. Question. I think they're down here.
Okay.
I feel like a boomer.
Can I access them? I don't know how
to. Top 4. There it is. Okay. What is one trait you admire about your protagonist?
One trait that I admire about Giovanni in Things We Couldn't Say is his bravery. I feel like he's incredibly brave, even when he's not super extroverted about it or super like out there, or like it's not obvious in the ways that he's being brave, but he's like kind of quietly being brave and setting boundaries for himself. Something I aspire. Like I dream of having those qualities. So.
Same. How did you come up with? Ooh, it just disappeared. It's magical. It's like the question gnomes came out of the word. How did you come up with the title "Things We Couldn't Say"? Was there an alternative title, perhaps "Things We Couldn't J"?
Yeah, that was exactly the alternate title.
I knew it.
Brilliant. No, I mean there were several titles that we like ran through, and this was the one that we all agreed on. That was like, this feels like it really captures the heart of the book and the heart of the protagonist Gio. There was a song, I can't remember the name of the song at the moment, but there's a song, I think it's by Tyrone Wells, that had a line or a lyric that said something like, sometimes there are things that we just can't say. And I remember being like, oh, wait a minute, like, and then pitching that to my team, and they were like, yes, this is the book, this is the title that like perfectly like encapsulates like Gio and his story, and so it felt very easy to come up with the title in that regard.
What was it? Do you remember any of the alternative ones? Where did you start?
Well, the very first title was called Until You Came Back, and it felt like that was, I don't know, it just didn't feel as like in your face as like Things We Couldn't Say, and I didn't want it to be like I felt like with Until You Came Back, it felt more like a romance or rom-com kind of thing.
Yeah. I
was like,
some Amish romance.
Yeah, exactly.
So, dude, I'm gonna do it one day. It's my challenge, like to myself. I'm gonna write an Amish romance novel. It's gonna happen.
I believe in you.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on intersectionality in LGBTQ and other books that feature marginalized identities?
Yeah, not entirely sure what the question means, but I will say I do believe that it's important. I believe it's important to show the intersectionality of different marginalizations, because no one is, or like people are rarely ever like just one thing, right? And so it's very important for me to like reflect the diverse world and community that I grew up in, the world and diverse community that I exist in currently, and just getting to hear from like people who've read my work, of how affirmed they felt in my work, encourages me to continue to do what I'm doing, to write diversely, you know. And my encouragement for young writers out there is to like write a realistic world that we live in, you know, like even if you're writing fantasy, like you don't want to write a fantasy where there are more dragons than people of color. You want to actively be intentional with that. So it was important to me in writing Things We Couldn't Say is to show the very different facets of like a person. Like someone can be Black and queer and religious and like so many other things at the same time. They're never just one thing.
This reminds me, this book, so Things We Couldn't Say is out. It's ready.
It's out.
Yep, you can go buy it. Go drop that cash.
Yeah.
Get a copy. Get a copy for your mom. Get a copy for your mom's cat.
Exactly.
How are you feeling? Are you feeling better post-release this one than Tyler? Blink yes. Blink twice. Yes.
Honestly, I will say I feel way worse than after Tyler Johnson.
Okay.
Literally all week, I've just been so sad and so depressed. I mean, there's some personal family stuff going on right now that all kind of came to light recently, and there's stuff related to my day job that like all kind of came out the day of my book release, and so like I haven't even had like an official like launch party or like celebration for Things We Couldn't Say, which makes me really sad. So it's been kind of like, I don't know, just kind of making it. However, I have gotten some really positive
good
reviews from people who've like, you know, posted about my book on social media, and that's been really encouraging. Friends and family members who've read my book in like one sitting, having, you know, give me encouragement, which I really appreciate. So kind of clinging on to those things, but yeah.
Okay, well, this is a good example of when you read somebody's book, and if you like it, tell them.
Yeah.
I think there's always a lot of times where people like send me a message, and it's like, I know you're super busy, and I'm like on the toilet or something that. So like, if you like it, send them a message because it helps. It can be the difference in the day, 100%. So
exactly.
You know, sorry. I know the feeling of like having this giant moment coming and then something happens and completely derails it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but know that you're a super talented dude. So
thank you.
And I know that people will connect with this, and those are the stories that matter. Yeah. Not the Goodreads. Don't go on Goodreads. Okay, so what is the best feedback? Here we go. Perfect end. What is the best feedback you've heard from a young reader?
The best feedback I've heard from a young reader. I mean, I remember I don't know if this is specific to Things We Couldn't Say, but I would just say like generally, like as an author, I remember going to an event and like this really young, maybe like 9, 10, 11-year-old boy, and he's Black. He came up to me and he was like in tears. He was like, just thank you for your book. He's like, I haven't really read it yet, but he's like, I'm just so thankful that I can see myself on the cover. And I was like I was speechless. Like I was like, yeah, like it's my honor, you know, it's my honor to kind of like to be in this job and to have this be part of like what I do and to like inspire young people in that way, you know, especially like young Black kids, you know, because I remember me being, you know, at one point a young Black kid and me desiring to have someone, you know, who I could go to and be like, thank you for writing this book, or like letting me see myself on the cover, you know. And so, yeah, I feel like, man, it kind of reminds me of why I do what I do. It's the motivation I go back to over and over again to continue to be sustained in this career of being an author, because it's like there's so many hard parts, there's so many moving parts, but the one thing that I always go back to is the feedback that I get from like the young Black kids who are like, thanks for writing a story where I can see myself reflected on the page, but also just on the cover of the book. And yeah, it just makes my heart really full.
Yeah. Good. It should.
Yeah.
And this is an open invitation for more emails that make Jay's heart really full.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you so much, Jay and Dave, for your wonderful conversation. I also loved hearing all of your false alternative titles, Dave. They were very creative. Thank you to everyone who tuned in tonight. Again, we do have signed book plates available. So to request one, just write signed book plate when you're checking out your cart on our website. And for those of you who tuned in late, don't worry, this talk will be replayed after the broadcast ends. And that about does it. All right. Stay safe, everyone, and have a good night. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. See you, Jay.
Yeah.